Hi, I'm Gabriel, and this is Learning English Path. And in this lesson, we're going to learn about the past continuous tense in the English language. And I've also written an article that goes with this video, so I will link that in the description so that you can have a read as well. All right, so the past continuous tense has a few other names in the English language. You can also call it the continuous past, the past progressive, or the progressive past. But don't worry, it's all one tense, and this is the tense that is formed with the was or were, right? The past form of be, plus present participle. And that's the ing form of the verb, right? So let's have a quick look at the difference between the past simple and the past continuous. So the past simple, you probably already know. All you have to do is use the subject plus the past tense of the verb, right? So for example, I studied this morning. And this is used to emphasize that an action or situation is already finished, right? So I studied this morning. It's over. It's completed, right? You can see that on the timeline there. But with the past continuous, even though it's the same action that we're talking about, it has a different emphasis. So if we say, I was studying this morning, instead of I studied this morning, I was studying this morning, we're emphasizing that the action or situation was in progress at that time, right? So you can see there on the timeline that the study time is what is important when we're using this past continuous tense. Now, let's have a little story using the past continuous, and hopefully you will get a good feel for how we use this tense. All right. Tom was studying English at college last year because he was thinking of becoming a teacher. His only problem was that he was always losing his glasses. One afternoon at 4 p.m., he was looking for his glasses. He searched his whole house, but he couldn't find them anywhere. I was wearing my glasses while I was reading in the library, Tom thought. I was taking notes when suddenly I heard children screaming. Their mother was telling them to be quiet, but they weren't listening. Maybe that's when I took them off and left them on the table. Tom wasn't planning on returning to the library that afternoon, but he went back for his glasses. When he saw the librarian, she was tidying the bookshelves. "Excuse me, I was wondering whether you could help me find my glasses," Tom asked the librarian. The librarian stared just above him and began laughing. Tom turned red because he realized that his glasses were sitting on his head. All right, so what are the 7 uses of the past continuous? And they were all in that little story, by the way. And we're going to go through all of these one by one. So the first use of the past continuous is to describe an action or situation that continued during a period of time. So here the period of time is last year, right? And the sentence is, Tom was studying English at college last year. Now, what's important to note here is that this could be any period of time, and the action or situation doesn't need to have continued for the entire stated period of time. So for example, Tom may have been studying English at college for this whole year, or perhaps he was just studying English at college for part of the year. Here in the timeline, we see that it's not completely covered. right? So keep that in mind. And you can state what the period of time is in the sentence, but if it's clear in context, then you don't necessarily have to include it in the same sentence as the past continuous form here. All right, the second use is to describe a continuous action or situation happening at a specific moment. So for example, one afternoon at 4 p.m., he was looking for his glasses. So this is the precise time, right? We're stating here at 4 p.m. What was he doing? He was looking for his glasses. So it may have begun, the action may have begun a long time before 4 p.m., or it may have begun just before 4 p.m. We don't know. And neither do we know how long it lasted, right? It could have, he could have gone on looking for his glasses for several hours after that. Or maybe he found his glasses at 4:01 p.m. We don't know. That's irrelevant when we're using this tense. And we don't necessarily have to say the precise time of day either. We could say, as in another sentence there, is that when he saw the librarian, she was tidying the bookshelves, right? So here, the context is clear. So the moment that he saw the librarian, we don't need to know the exact time of day. We just need to understand the moment that we're talking about. So what was she doing? All right, the third use is to describe a past habit or regular occurrence. So the example is, he was always losing his glasses. So you see there on the timeline that he lost his glasses several times over a stretched out period of time, right? We don't know exactly how long of a time this is. Maybe we're talking about last year, or maybe we're talking about a period of several years, or maybe we're talking about a shorter period. Who knows? But in this kind of sentence, it's common for us to use adverbs, particularly adverbs of frequency, such as always, or usually, or often, or never, if we want to turn the sentence around, right? And we're going to look a little bit closer at adding adverbs in a few minutes, but here it's just important that you understand that this is one of the uses as well. So for example, if you're talking about what your friend was like 5 years ago, you could say, he was eating a lot of meat in those days. You can also describe an irregular occurrence by saying, he was eating very little meat in those days, right? That's how it works. The next use is to describe an interrupted action or situation. And we usually use the word when for this, right? So the example sentence here is, I was taking notes when suddenly I heard children screaming. So we combine this with the past simple and the word when to show that the action or situation was interrupted by the action that we're using the past simple for, right? And this could mean that the continuous action was immediately stopped, right? But not necessarily. For example, Tom may have continued taking notes even after he heard children screaming. The fifth use is to describe concurrent actions or situations, right? Two actions or situations that are happening at the same time, that were happening at the same time in the past. So the words while when and as can connect two past continuous clauses in order to describe this situation. And the example sentence we have here is, I was wearing my glasses while I was reading in the library. All right, so another great use, actually. And the sixth use is to describe planned actions. All right, so this is actually a very interesting one because we could use it to talk about something in the present as well. So for example, when we say he was thinking of becoming a teacher, we could mean that Tom was planning this in the past and it just didn't work out for him, right? Or, on the other hand, we could mean that he's actually still got this plan. For example, if you're reading the menu at a restaurant and your friend asks you what you're going to order, you can say, I was planning on getting the fish, right? And that's the plan that you have now. And as you can see in the timeline there, Tom might still have a plan to become a teacher, right? And finally, the seventh use is to make polite requests or suggestions. So, for example here, in the story, Tom asks, "Excuse me, I was wondering whether you could help me find my glasses." Right? And it's a question because it's a polite request. And we use the past continuous for this. We can use the verbs wondering or hoping or even thinking. So for example, you could politely ask someone to pass you the salt if you're eating dinner together, right? You could say, I was wondering if you could pass me the salt, please, right? Or if you're lost and you want to find your way home, you could stop someone and ask them, I was hoping you could tell me how to get to this street, right? Or even if you want to ask someone out on a date, you could say, hey, I was thinking, would you like to go out with me next Friday night? So how do we form the past continuous tense? So just to make an affirmative statement, it would be subject plus the past form of the word be, which is was or were, plus the present participle, which is the ing verb, right? So for example, Tom was studying. The children were screaming. For the negative statement, it would be subject plus was or were plus not plus present participle. And of course, you can contract the not so that it's wasn't or weren't. For example, she wasn't watching TV. She was not watching TV, right? And they weren't listening. Now for the questions. So we're going to use the word interrogatives here, okay? So just know that the word interrogative is a fancy word for question. An affirmative closed interrogative, so these are yes or no questions, is was or were plus subject plus present participle. So was she doing her homework? Were they eating? And you could answer yes, they were, or no, she wasn't, right? Negative closed interrogatives. Was or were plus not plus subject plus present participle. Wasn't she doing her homework? Weren't they eating? All right, now open questions, open interrogatives. So the affirmative one is interrogative, right? That's a what question or how, right? So you've got what, when, where, who, why, how. That's an interrogative word. Interrogative plus was or were plus subject plus present participle. What were they eating? Why was she doing her homework? And finally, we have a negative open interrogative. Interrogative plus was or were plus not plus subject plus present participle. What weren't they eating? Why wasn't she doing her homework? All right, so that's the formation, the structure of the past continuous. Now, what else should you know about the past continuous tense? We're going to go through 4 more important points here. The first one is, as I said earlier, about adding adverbs. Now, adverbs can be used to modify the meaning of any sentence, and this is no different when using the past continuous. In fact, they're quite common, particularly adverbs of frequency to describe past habits. And there's no need to be confused when adverbs are added to past continuous sentences. They can be placed in multiple spots in the sentence, but this is important, they never change the order of the rest of the structure. So you don't have to worry about that. The rest of the orders that we just looked at in all of the statements and the interrogatives, they stay the same. It doesn't matter that you've added adverbs to the sentence. So for example, he was always losing his glasses. So here we put the adverb before the present participle, right? The same with they were never listening. And the same with were you still working late? And here, late is also an adverb, right? So you can put the adverb after the verb in some cases as well. You can even put the adverb at the beginning of the sentence in some cases. It depends on what kind of adverb it is and why you're using it. But especially for adverbs of frequency, we would usually place them just before the present participle. All right, then we have non-continuous verbs. So there are some verbs which we cannot use with any continuous tense. All right, for example, it's incorrect to say, I was being a student, or he wasn't liking the coffee. In these cases, you should generally use the past simple instead. There are several of these non-continuous verbs. For example, need, right? Want, love, hate, own. And all of these verbs are stative verbs, right? They describe a state, to be in a state of need, to be in a state of liking something or wanting something. However, it's not that simple. Because some stative verbs can be used in continuous tenses if they have a more dynamic meaning, which means that they are used as action verbs. You can see there in the example that the sentence, I wasn't caring for the soup on Tuesday, is incorrect. And this is because care here is a stative verb. It's the state of caring. So we can't use it with the ing here. However, you can say, I wasn't caring for my grandfather on Tuesday, meaning I wasn't looking after him on Tuesday, right? It wasn't me who was with him on Tuesday. All right, so that is the difference that you have to watch out for there. Next is really just a strong reminder to make sure that the only past tense verb you use here is the past tense form of the verb be, right? Was or were. You cannot replace those words, was or were, with another verb, right? So if you remember in the story, there was a sentence that included the words, she began laughing. And just be aware that this is a past simple form, all right, not a past continuous. And that is because the action here is to begin, right? The action is not laughing. The action in this sentence, she began laughing, is to begin, the past form of begin. So to make it a past continuous sentence, we need to add the word was and change the form of the verb to begin to beginning, to the present participle. So she was beginning to laugh, right? You could also, of course, say she was laughing, but it changes the meaning there. Just note that. All right, and the last point here is that you can also use the passive voice when you're using the past continuous tense. For example, we can say Sally was singing the song, right? That is the active voice. And we can switch it around and make it passive by saying the song was being sung by Sally. So all that we do here is we switch around the subject with the object and make the present participle being and add the past participle immediately afterwards. So in question form, interrogative form, why wasn't Sally singing the song? Or why wasn't the song being sung by Sally? All right, it's exercise time. So it's time to test your understanding. I will show you a jumbled sentence and it's up to you to unscramble them. All right, so the first one is working yesterday was she. And there's no question mark. So this is a statement. All right, pause the video and work it out now. Okay, the answer is she was working yesterday, right? Fairly easy one. Hope you got that. Number 2, was shopping about going I thinking. Pause the video. Okay, the answer is I was thinking about going shopping, right? And that is the 6th use that we talked about to describe planned actions. All right, number 3, eating, watching TV. Were you? You were, while, and it's a question. All right, pause the video. And the answer is, were you watching TV while you were eating? Or you could also say, were you eating while you were watching TV? All right, number 4, usually, Tom, not, driving, was. Pause the video. Okay, the answer is Tom was not usually driving. And the last one, being, millions of people, the news, by, watched, was. Pause the video. All right, the answer is the news was being watched by millions of people. So that's the passive voice there. All right, I hope you found this useful. And make sure to check out the article that I'm putting in the description as well. And also, please make sure to give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and click that bell so that you know when I post new videos. And if you want to learn more grammar like this, please check out my course, the English Language Intermediate Masterclass. All right, I've put that in the description as well. All right, my friends, keep learning and keep going.